in a part of the world consumed by war. One nation's warriors stand apart.
We move toward the enemy, we attack, we initiate the combat.
Every day is a desperate fight for survival. Surrender is never an option.
It's a country that's surrendered by enemies that are constantly in fighting.
The bitter experience of deadly combat has forged Israel's commandos into the most honed fighting force on the planet. The Israel Defense Force has over 40 elite units. The message is simple. Don't mess with the IDF. It's time to go ballistic. Israeli commandos are long on experience. In combat virtually every day for 7 decades, they are all action and no talk.
That's the way we do things, very instinctively and very aggressively.
Born during the struggle for statehood, Israeli elite strike forces are in the DNA of the nation. They pulled off daring revenge strikes after the Munich massacre, and then perfected the art of hostage rescue at Entebbe Airport.
The state was born in war and is sustained by the threat of war. Having forces that can attack behind enemy lines is vitally important.
Today's Israeli commandos are the most specialized fighting elites in the world. 40 units, united by one simple philosophy: attack.
Anybody who opposes Israel is aware that these people may strike, and it may come in the most unconventional way.
The Israeli commando has an incredible range of weapons for an incredible range of strike missions. From the combat-proven Uzi submachine gun family to the latest space-age Tagore assault rifle, the Israeli commando is always one technological step ahead of his enemies. Now, weaponology will go back through Israeli history to find out how a struggle for freedom, the fight against international terrorism, and brutal hand-to-hand fighting came together to make the Israeli commando the most battle-hardened warrior in the world. Israel is a commando nation. Surrounded by enemies and always outnumbered, the whole nation lives under constant siege.
Israel is a state which has owed its existence to its military excellence.
It was no different at the beginning. In the 1940s, Jewish settlers fought for their own homeland in the Middle East. The Palmach were the spearhead.
It was decided that this organization needs a unit which is like a commando. Like Palmach in Hebrew means striking forces.
The Palmach in Israeli history have an almost mythical quality. They're seen as being the cradle in many ways of Jewish society.
An unorthodox British officer named Ord Wingate was behind the Palmach's techniques.
Ord Wingate is a man with great, if unconventional, military talents, who he put at the disposal of the Jews when there was no state of Israel.
Wingate's philosophy was simple: attack. He taught the black arts of commando warfare. Sabotage and hit and run were his stock in trade.
The Palmach trained to attack even when you are defending. In other words, try to fight back.
The Palmach used whatever weapons they could find. Arms flooded in from war-torn Europe. One submachine gun stands out.
What we have here is possibly the most historic submachine gun ever made, the Mark II Sten, or the Sten. It's more or less made up of scrap from a plumber's shop.
The rugged and simple mechanism could cope with the sand and dust of the Middle East. It was easy to fire, and the small compact parts made it the weapon of choice.
It had been a simple, easy gun to train Jewish settlers on. So it's a gun kind of tailor-made for its insurgencies or resistance movements.
It was easy to conceal because you will take it apart and they could put it also under their clothes and it would completely vanish. Nobody would see it.
Easily concealed, compact, and simple to operate. It does the job.
You got a little bit of scatter. It's still an acceptable group, but it's a little bit to the right side of the target. For as simple of a weapon it was, very controllable, very, very effective.
The Palmach helped win a Jewish homeland in 1948. For the young state and its military elite, self-sufficiency was everything. A top priority, replacing the Sten with their own submachine gun. In that first year of nationhood, a young Palmach warrior by the name of Uziel Gal developed an icon of popular culture, the Uzi.
Designed by the Israelis with the basis that we're going to take some of the best features of existing submachine gun designs that are available.
In concept, this commando weapon was inspired by the rugged and concealable Sten. But in design, it more closely resembles a family of submachine guns made in Czechoslovakia.
They copied from the Czech CZ-23-25 series of submachine guns a design in which the bolt actually telescopes over the barrel.
The bolt and the barrel sit one on top of the other. This reduces the overall length of the gun. Another advantage, by placing the moving parts and weight over the center balance point of the weapon, it becomes easier to handle.
By putting the mass in the middle, balance-wise, when the gun cycles, it has less rearward thump. It's a very stable open-bolt submachine gun.
The telescoping bolt design was unique to the Uzi and the CZ series. The compact but easy-to-handle Uzi. A weapon tailor-made for elite warriors on the attack.
Okay, let's try a little trigger time with the Uzi. Headshots. Let's go to full auto, or what we call the fun position, a series of bursts. Fired semi-automatic for precision shots were some of these rounds I fired right here. So it's perfectly effective if you understand the technique.
The Uzi is so well balanced that a skilled soldier can, in theory, fire it one-handed, just like in the movies.
We all love Arnold Schwarzenegger, and we all remember him in the movie Terminator. People say, can you control the gun? Well, let's just see what you think, folks. Here we go. Can it be shot effectively with one hand? You know what you're doing. You can do a pretty good job.
Still, handed firing technique is more suited to a movie lot than a battlefield.
32 rounds I fired with Mr. Schwarzenegger's technique. I shot at the head, and you can see of 32 rounds, I got a pretty good hit, but there are a lot of misses.
Mookie Betzer is a legendary Israeli commando with a love of Uziel Gal's compact killer. His judge, jury, and executioner. April 1973. Mookie and a team that included future Prime Minister Ehud Barak landed by boat in Beirut. Their mission, to eliminate PLO leaders believed to have ordered the massacre of Israeli athletes at the 1972 Munich Olympics. The unlikely couple had Uzis and grenades under tourist disguises.
Ehud Barak was dressed as a woman. We arrived at our targets. We waited until Ehud gave the word, when the two other units arrived at the doors of the other two targets. At the moment we got the word, we blasted the door, broke in, and killed Yasser Arafat's deputy, Yusuf Najal.
The mission achieved its targets, but remains controversial. What is not disputed is the ability of Israeli commandos to strike hard in the lair of the enemy.
The reputation of Israeli Special Forces today depends upon, obviously, the deeds of the past. Therefore, people are constantly aware that they may well get hit in some way that other states may not actually countenance, but Israel may feel is absolutely justified.
Israeli weaponologists developed smaller and more lethal versions of their classic firearm. Before the Beirut raid, Muki's team had tried out a prototype. It wasn't quite there yet, but before long, the mini Uzi hit the streets.
This is the mini Uzi with a silencer. This is used in a special operation when you want to conceal the sound of the shooting.
Years on, and the Uzi family of submachine guns is still #1 with Israeli commandos. But when commandos attack in wide open spaces, they're going to need bigger bullets and more firepower. Israeli commandos are always on the attack. They need a firearm that combines accuracy, rate of fire, and hitting power with never-let-me-down reliability. Israeli weaponologists have left no stone unturned in the quest for the ultimate commando firearm. Muki Betzer spent 22 years in the most elite units of the Israel Defense Force, including over a decade in the super-secret Sayeret Matkal. The Kalashnikov, or AK-47, was his weapon of choice. Muki's faithful Klatch had been shipped to Egypt from Russia ahead of the Six-Day War in 1967. The Soviets supported the enemies of Israel in a proxy war against the U.S. When Israeli forces crushed the Egyptian army, they captured thousands of Kalashnikovs.
The first ones to receive those weapons were the special units, and all of the Sayeret Matkal was equipped with the Kalashnikov, a great weapon. It's accurate, it's reliable, and every soldier wants a powerful weapon like this.
Muki's Kalashnikov proved its worth in the desperate fighting of the Yom Kippur War 6 years later. In October 1973, Syria and Egypt launched a surprise attack on Israel. Commando units were thrown into combat zones in an effort to turn the tide. Muki and his unit of elite Sayeret Matkal fighters raced to defend Israel's borders at Naffa on the Golan Heights.
An officer identified 3 helicopters landing 2 kilometers to the north. We understood immediately that it was a commando unit coming to assault Naffa.
They rushed to meet the threat head-on. With the IDF attitude, attack is always the best form of defense.
We engaged them in a face-to-face combat over only a few meters. The firepower we applied on them meant that within 3 to 4 minutes we'd killed all the 40 commando soldiers. Their commander was injured and we took him hostage.
Israeli counterattacks, spearheaded by elite units, dragged Israel back from the brink. The Yom Kippur War was over after 3 weeks of desperate fighting. The Russian-made Kalashnikov had proved its dominance on the battlefield. But the experience of Yom Kippur prompted soul-searching in Israel. Every branch of the military was reviewed and improvements demanded. The designers at Israel Military Industries took the best assault rifle in the world, the AK-47, and set about making it better.
Among the other things the Israelis did, they said, look, what can we do to make the shortcomings of the AK better?
The AK-47 is not an accurate weapon. The front and rear sights are placed very close together. Any error in lining up the sights is magnified. By simply moving the rear sight to the back of the rifle, the Israel updates immediately became more accurate. The AK became the Galil.
How does the Galil compare to the original AK-47? Remember, this is the final development process in the Kalashnikov. It technically has much better sights. Going hot.
Ken and Larry are both former members of U.S. Special Operations. Both are awesome shots. Even over 100 yards. But the Galil should give Ken a slight edge.
Larry's AK-47 group is actually pretty good. Of course, Larry's an exceptional rifleman, but well-placed hits. With my Galil, shots a little bit more centered, and I would accredit most of that to the aperture sighting system.
Israel Military Industries also designed folding and collapsible stocks, added bolt cutters, and even a bottle opener. A combat-proven firing mechanism with the latest gadgets attached. The super-accurate Galil.
Good grouping right in the center of the target, very good accuracy.
Skip forward to the 80s and 90s. Israeli forces were sucked into street fighting in Lebanon and Gaza. So they asked IWI to come up with a new generation of weapon that combined the precision punch of their Galil and M16 rifles with the compact size of the Uzi.
They request a short and compact rifle.
A team of engineers under genius designer Zalman Shebs once again looked at the best the world had to offer. Their new design borrowed a British breakthrough. The radical bullpup design first appeared on the EM2 in 1951. The unique design allows a long barrel to be housed in a short rifle. The space-age Tavor and an even shorter micro Tavor were born.
The barrel begins from here until here. So the barrel is the same barrel as in a regular assault rifle.
A long barrel makes for an accurate weapon. The Micro Tavor packs rifle accuracy into a submachine gun frame.
The Micro Tavor was developed together with our special forces. They gave us feedback on all kind of features of the weapon to be adapted to their needs.
Accuracy, rate of fire, reliability, and power. The Micro Tavor is the ultimate commando weapon for the 21st century. One type of mission has come to define the Israeli commando. The awesome reputation of Israeli special forces was built on the daring hostage rescue missions of the 1970s.
Suddenly, everybody in the world knew all about Israeli special forces.
Israeli commandos are the most specialized fighting force in the world. 40-plus units, each trained for a unique mission. Hostage rescue is the most complex of all strike missions.
Every mission needs expert. You have a doctor for eye, and you have a doctor for stomach, and you have a doctor for heart. And this is exactly what we find. We need elite units that train to do special missions.
Hostage takings are a fact of life in Israel. The rescue missions are the speciality of one unit. The Yaman.
Today, Yaman Israel, we recognize all over the world. It's a very professional unit. Over the years, they've developed tactics and techniques that everyone learns from today.
The Yaman cherry-picked some of the best Special Forces members and tactics. The Yaman's doctrine is attack. Their secret is practice.
The idea is to create controlled chaos. You have to be very fast and very accurate and not trigger happy. When you have hostages around, you can't just shoot thousands of bullets off, or hundreds of bullets off, and, you know, hopefully killing only the terrorists. You have to hit the bus hard, fast. It's going to be very surgical.
The Yaman was created in 1988, and they only act within Israel's borders. Rewind to the airliner hijackings of the 1970s. Jobs for Israel's premier fighting elite, the super secret Sayeret Matkal.
Sayeret Matkal is a very special unit which has very secret and confidential objectives. In addition, it has one more objective of anti-terror warfare, hostage rescue.
Sayeret Matkal wrote the book on airline hijack rescue. The 1972 Sabina incident in Lod, Israel was a perfect example. A team including future Prime Ministers Ehud Barak and Benjamin Netanyahu posed as airport technicians, sabotaged the plane, and overcame the hijackers. The strategy was copied all over the world. But the Entebbe hijack and rescue 4 years later broke all known rules.
The Entebbe raid is one of the great classic examples of the success of special forces.
On June 27, 1976, Palestinian and German terrorists demanding the release of Palestinian prisoners hijacked Air France Flight 139 from Tel Aviv to Paris. The terrorists flew the plane to Entebbe in Uganda. The hijackers released all the non-Jewish passengers. 104 hostages remained, including the crew. They were moved to the abandoned old terminal building. In Israel, the separation of Jew and non-Jew had chilling echoes of the death camp selections. The crisis became an Israeli matter, a job for the elite Sayeret Matkal. The Sayeret team immediately started planning a solution the only way they knew how: attack. Released hostages confirmed that Ugandan leader Idi Amin was colluding with the terrorists. A division of his best soldiers guarded the airport. A large commando force would be needed. But a large force would make the crucial element of surprise difficult to maintain.
The element of surprise is the key to the success of the mission, because the terrorist could pull the trigger in a split second and start killing hostages.
Mookie Betzer was put in charge of operational planning and would lead the break-in teams. By amazing coincidence, Mookie had trained Idi Amin's paratroopers 9 years earlier. He used his experience in Uganda to hatch a brilliant and daring plan. All he needed was a black Mercedes.
I knew that a Mercedes is used by high-ranking officers, ministers and Idi Amin. When a soldier sees a Mercedes, he salutes and lets the car go by. That is why I suggested that we take a Mercedes, and that's how we would keep the element of surprise.
The terrorists thought they were safe. They believed a large-scale commando raid launched 2,500 miles from Israel was the stuff of fantasy. But fantasy was about to become reality. The initial force of Sayeret Matkal fighters flew by Hercules into Entebbe Airport. They used the cover of complete darkness. Mookie and raid commander Yoni Netanyahu packed into the Mercedes with 9 other warriors.
We landed at midnight and immediately unloaded the Mercedes and the 2 Land Rovers.
The Mercedes team still had over a mile to travel to the old terminal where the hostages were being held. Things quickly began to go wrong. Halfway to the terminal, the Mercedes encountered a Ugandan guard. Yoni Netanyahu didn't wait to see if the disguise worked. He opened fire with his silenced pistol. The Ugandan soldier went down. The commandos in the Land Rovers then opened fire with unsilenced Kalashnikovs.
At that moment, we lost the element of surprise. We were forced to launch the attack before we had got to our planned positions. We raced into the openings and in seconds we broke into the terminal.
Mookie's break-in teams quickly recovered their momentum.
In that break-in, we killed 4 terrorists in the main terminal hall in the matter of seconds. A second team eliminated terrorists in the arrest quarters.
All the terrorists were killed. A single hostage was shot. But outside, tragedy had struck. Raid commander Yoni Netanyahu had been hit by fire from the control tower.
I went outside and I saw that he was injured severely. A bullet had penetrated here in the chest. I called Shaul Mofaz and I told him, hit with the RPG and with your machine guns. They subdued the control tower.
3 more Hercules landed full of troops to secure the airport perimeter and organize the evacuation. 2 more hostages died during the escape. As a parting shot, the commandos destroyed Amin's 11 MiGs with RPGs and FN MAG machine guns.
It was a remarkable feat, which is
Jewish settlers fought for their own homeland in the Middle East. The Palmach were the spearhead.
It was decided that this organization needs a unit which is like a commando. Like Palmach in Hebrew means striking forces.
The Palmach in Israeli history have an almost mythical quality. They're seen as being the cradle in many ways of Jewish society.
An unorthodox British officer named Ord Wingate was behind the Palmach's techniques.
Ord Wingate was a man with great, if unconventional, military talents, who he put at the disposal of the Jews when there was no state of Israel.
Wingate's philosophy was simple: attack. He taught the black arts of commando warfare. Sabotage and hit and run were his stock in trade.
The Palmach trained to attack even when you are defending. In other words, try to fight back.
The Palmach used whatever weapons they could find. Arms flooded in from war-torn Europe. One submachine gun stands out.
What we have here is possibly the most historic submachine gun ever made, the Mark II Sten, or the Sten. It's more or less made up of scrap from a plumber's shop.
The rugged and simple mechanism could cope with the sand and dust of the Middle East. It was easy to fire, and the small compact parts made it the weapon of choice.
It had been a simple, easy gun to train Jewish settlers on. So it's a gun kind of tailor-made for its insurgencies or resistance movements.
It was easy to conceal because you will take it apart. And
these people may strike, and it may come in the most unconventional way.
The Israeli commando has an incredible range of weapons for an incredible range of strike missions. From the combat-proven Uzi submachine gun family to the latest space-age Tagore assault rifle, the Israeli commando is always one technological step ahead of his enemies. Now, weaponology will go back through Israeli history to find out how a struggle for freedom, the fight against international terrorism, and brutal hand-to-hand fighting came together to make the Israeli commando the most battle-hardened warrior in the world. Israel is a commando nation. Surrounded by enemies and always outnumbered, the whole nation lives under constant siege.
Israel is a state which has owed its existence to its military excellence.
It was no different at the beginning. In the 1940s, Israeli commandos are long on experience. In combat virtually every day for 7 decades, they are all action and no talk.
That's the way we do things, very instinctively and very aggressively.
Born during the struggle for statehood, Israeli elite strike forces are in the DNA of the nation. They pulled off daring revenge strikes after the Munich massacre, and then perfected the art of hostage rescue at Entebbe Airport.
The state was born in war and is sustained by the threat of war. Having forces that can attack behind enemy lines is vitally important.
Today's Israeli commandos are the most specialized fighting elites in the world. 40 units, united by one simple philosophy: attack.
Anybody who opposes Israel is aware that
in a part of the world consumed by war, one nation's warriors stand apart.
We move toward the enemy, we attack, we initiate the combat.
Every day is a desperate fight for survival. Surrender is never an option.
It's a country that's surrendered by enemies but constantly in fighting.
The bitter experience of deadly combat has forged Israel's commandos into the most honed fighting force on the planet. The Israel Defense Force has over 40 elite units. The message is simple. Don't mess with the IDF. It's time to go ballistic.